Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It is now 2 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting of the Waterfront Stewardship Committee to order Thursday, October 26, 2023 at, like I said, just 2 o'clock. I'd also like to acknowledge with respect that we're meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking people, and that we are honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. So item number 2, approval of the agenda. So if I can get a motion to approve the Waterfront Stewardship Committee meeting agenda for October 26, 2023. Just a recommendation that the agenda of the Waterfront Stewardship Committee meeting be adopted as presented. If I can get a motion, and that's Ms. Gibbons. Is there any discussion? No discussion, so motion carried. Thank you. Item number 3. I can get a motion for adoption of the Special Waterfront Stewardship Committee meeting minutes of May 18th, 2023 to be adopted as presented. Motion. Sorry, I've forgotten your name. Chris Lang. Yes. Thank you. Is there any discussion on the minutes? No, any corrections? Nope. Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Do we have any members of the public that are participating online today? Nope. We do have, Neve Ryan. Thank you. And actually I have some regrets. Sean McCulchinook is not able to attend. Okay, great. So we'll move on to the next item is new business. And I think we have a presentation today from Nafiseh. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Today, I will be presenting the environmental and traffic impact of human activities on Ocean Boulevard. The letter dated June 7th, 2023 was received by Council and referred to the Waterfront Stewardship Committee for consideration. This letter proposes closing Ocean Boulevard during avian nesting season. I will be providing the committee with a summary of the background information related to the impacts of human activities on the Esquimalt Lagoon Migratory Bird Sanctuary and the surrounding area to assist in committee's consideration of the proposed seasonal closure of Ocean Boulevard. So starting with the Esquimalt Lagoon Migratory Bird Sanctuary, as you guys know, it is one of the city's park, and it's established as Migratory Bird Sanctuary under the Migratory Bird Convention Act as well. Esquimalt Lagoon is administered by Canadian Wildlife Services. Back in 2020, an article was published by Birds Canada indicating observed changes of some of the bird species population following Ocean Boulevard temporary closure due to COVID-19 pandemic. This article indicates that the number of some bird species has been increased comparing to the historic baseline data, which may be a result of a decreased human activity and disturbance on the Ocean Boulevard. This article generated feedback from the community, both for and against limiting vehicle traffic along the lagoon, which created the opportunity for the city of opening the discussion to a broader community. In the meantime, the Colwood Waterfront Improvement Project was underway. So the How We Use and Enjoy Ocean Boulevard survey was designed and launched to hear the community's desires, expectations, and to consider options for waterfront public realm enhancement. The survey generated 13,800 total visits to the survey and just over 3,800 submitted responses. So as you see over here on this slide, 61% of respondents were in favor of allowing the traffic on Ocean Boulevard, shown as blue. 39% supported some form of closure, including close a portion permanently, shown as red, and the percentage was 22%. On the weekend was 10%, and it's shown as green. And some people were in favor of closing seasonally at 7%, shown as purple. Oh, sorry. The input received from the community through this survey was reported to Council on June 22, 2020. And following a staff recommendation in the same meeting, Council directed staff to initiate a process to develop a comprehensive plan for the city's waterfront public realm. The city started developing the Colwood Waterfront Stewardship Plan late 2020. During the process, an environmental overview assessment, called as EOA, was prepared in March 2021, which identified uncontrolled uncontrolled public access around Skymark Lagoon and Cooper Peninsula as one of the key environmental issues that need to be addressed. The draft Colwood Waterfront Stewardship Plan was compiled in November 2021, which includes a significant consultation with a member of public and stakeholders, Squamish and Songhees nations. And through that draft, the concerns of uncontrolled public access is already addressed. So about Canadian geese. Canada geese is desired as a significant issue to the Squamish Lagoon Migratory Bird Sanctuary in the EOA report. It is reported in the report that Canada geese are causing negative impacts on the habitat as a result of feeding on a wide variety of native plants in the lagoon area. It is also indicated that alteration of the plant community has caused erosion, affected nutrition cycling, shading, and soil salinity levels. CRD board has recently approved Canada Geese Management Services Establishment bylaw to work with the key stakeholders, including local government, First Nations, and stewardship group. Their intention is to take a coordinated approach to outreach and educate the community and the local government, development of an egg addling program, coordination of provincial and federal permits, and conducting strategic harvest. Next one would be the dogs. Environment and Climate Change Canada has identified off-leash dogs as one of the disturbances on shorebird in migratory bird sanctuaries and published the technical report in 2022 called Dogs and Migratory Bird within migratory bird sanctuaries in the Greater Victoria area. In this report, the dog's impact on birds are investigated through literature review and public survey, which articulates that shorebirds are at the greatest risk of disturbance by dog based on habitat availability and co-occurrence with dogs. Some shorebird species are some of the red list concern of the BC, such as great blue heron or red knots. This technical report recommends that collaboration with municipalities to ensure municipal practices, bylaws, communication, and signage align with the Migratory Bird Convention Act and the Migratory Bird Sanctuary regulations. These actions could help raise public awareness and in turn promote compliance with federal regulations. The Colwood Animal Control Bylaw regulates the Esquimalt Lagoon Migratory Bird Sanctuary as unleashed area, and the minimum fine of $75 is outlined for the first contravention. And as it goes more, it's going to be higher. I missed one of the, as you can see, some of the signage at the right, the bottom, to raise awareness of unleashed area around Esquimalt Lagoon. The city has placed the signs around the Esquimalt Lagoon area in collaboration with Canadian Wildlife Services. And Bird Canada has collected data by citizens, scientists over 20 years, alongside targeted research project via BC Coastal Waterbird Survey. Regular surveys have been undertaken for the Esquimalt Lagoon Migratory Bird Sanctuary as part of the this survey since 2010. And throughout the process and throughout their data collection, they suggest various approaches for successful conservation other than mitigated disturbance is required through their studies and through the data that they already collected. These approaches include, but are not limited to, waterfront planning and framework, enforcement of migratory bird sanctuary regulations, water quality monitoring, ecosystem management, vegetated land cover, outreach and education, such as signage, community involvement, and collaborative management approach with the stakeholders. The implementation of Colwood Waterfront Stewardship Plan will advance these approaches that they are recommended by Parks Canada. With regards to the events and associated noise, garbage, and increased traffic concerns, the city has recently begun a shift in the events from Esquimalt Lagoon to the beachland, such as Eats and Beats that we had this summer. And it demonstrates that cities has the commitment to help mitigate human impact of these events on the avian in Esquimalt Lagoon Migratory Bird Sanctuary. And that's all for today. Thank you, and I would be happy to answer any question you may have.
Thank you for that presentation, Nafiseh. And I think these reports were intended to be received for information today and to stimulate conversation at the committee level. So I just thought I would open it up to committee members if there are any questions that anyone has on any of these reports for Nafiseh today or for staff.
Thank you. Thanks for that. I have a couple of questions. The first is about the survey. Although the survey was in response to the news coverage around birds being apparently enjoying a car-free peninsula, it didn't look to me that the survey actually discussed that in any of the materials that went with it, other than referring to a news article, but not really saying what was in it. So I'm wondering if the respondents of the survey would have had that context and therefore been answering it with the knowledge that we were really talking about the migratory birds, or whether they were just considering it in terms of the amenity, because reading the preamble to the survey, the message was more about, you know, bikes and pedestrians rather than the birds. So I'm wondering if that might have influenced the response a little bit. And the other question I have is to do with the sort of the dogs on leash aspect. Now that's been in place for a couple of years now in sort of Victoria and Oak Bay on the beaches around the harbour, whatever they call that migratory bird sanctuary, seems to be wholly ineffectual in keeping dogs on leash in those areas. So I'm wondering if the city has any kind of, strategies for that beyond signage, which just doesn't seem to be effective in that context.
Thanks for the great question. About the survey, I was not sort of like working about that time, but by the time I go through the reports and all the material that I could find, the main perspective was how to enhance the waterfront public realm. Maybe the focus was not specifically to the birds, but I believe that it's been already considered, and that's why they open to the community if you want to have that closure or not. And based on the sort of like the communication that I personally had with Birds Canada through some of the material that I received from them, they actually have that the latest that the best approach is having that waterfront planning rather than just focusing on the conservation. And the main purpose of the waterfront stewardship plan is having a comprehensive guiding document that address ecosystem management, conservation, having people for the recreational purposes in that area, and all the other goals that it's already addressed. Hopefully it answered the first question. For the second one, I agree that it might not be efficient. I can go and come back with a better answer for you. But as far as I understand, the area that is on leash is more like on the migratory bird sanctuary side of the lagoon. And I think on the other side is not really included. But at the same time, we had that discussion a few times through our parks management planning, even throughout the council meeting, that the city consider some of the new dog parks that it's specifically for parks to be off leash. One of them is proposed to be in Colwood Creek Park, and we are looking for the opportunities that we might have in the Corey Park. So these are the two that we might have in the future that we might be more restricted to have those on leash areas on leash and keep the off leash separate from them. But maybe we can say it's a sort of like in process project.
Thanks, Nafiseh. Madam Chair, if I may, I'd just like to bring to the committee's attention, there is a recommendation in the Waterfront Stewardship Plan to review the provisions of the animal control bylaw as it relates to Esquimalt Lagoon. As Nafiseh pointed out, we have the boundary of the on-leash and off-leash zone is essentially a line in the sand, as it were, along the beach. And so that makes it challenging to enforce.
Thank you. Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, thank you. First off, I just want to thank the committee for allowing us to kind of have this discussion around the letter that was submitted. But in regards to the off-leash dog areas and enforcement, I guess the CRD would be the ones that are responsible for the enforcement. Every time I'm at the lagoon, I'm constantly asking people to please leash their dogs on the migratory bird side. And I don't think there's enough signage or information out there in the community for people to be educated that most of the ocean side is on leash. Off leash is only from the washrooms to Royal Bay, is my understanding. And it's not documented anywhere. Like how would people know other than someone like me going and being the mean person by asking them to leash their dog. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of bring that to everybody's attention. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Sarah. And if I can maybe just ask Mr. Borhill for, do you feel that we have adequate signage? I mean, I've spent lots of time down there, but to be honest, it has not necessarily been front and center. Do you feel like we have enough adequate signage along the beach side regarding leashing your pets?
I'll start off by just a note about how the city approaches enforcement. So the city has a service contract with the Capital Regional District to provide animal control services as well as enforcement of our animal control bylaw. It is a city bylaw. Our peace officers are enabled to enforce it, but the primary work is done through that contract with the CRD. Certainly, education and on the ground infrastructure to help with the program of that space is going to be critical to the success of the waterfront stewardship plan. Throughout the recommendations, it touches on improvements to things like signage that would help aid with a more responsible use of the space, and in particular with dogs on leash. So the hope is that will be implemented through the building out of the plan.
Go ahead, Farley.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the issue of enforcement is a big concern for us. I'm a resident, as a lot of you know, on Ocean Boulevard, and having talked to local residents about the waterfront redevelopment plan, the issue of enforcement is a single, I guess, biggest issue for most people. Once again, like you have, we're always, my wife and I are always trying to get people to put their dogs on leash. 3 months ago, I had a piece of driftwood thrown on my head by someone, and I had to file a report with the West Shore RCMP because I told them, get your damn dog on a leash. It's ridiculous. There are young kids running around. 2 of our neighbors' kids have been bitten. But it's not just keeping dogs on leash. It's what's going on with the traffic there. The issue of enforcement is really a huge issue. People are getting very cynical and saying, the hell with on leash, off leash, trying to achieve some kind of traffic control if there's no enforcement. And also the issue of the signage. Unless the signage is bold and really makes a statement, it's just not going to do anything. That's been my experience, with various development plans I've worked on and trying to get them implemented, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and the Yukon. If the signage is sufficient, if it's bold, if it's large enough to really make a statement that we're not fooling around, you're going to do this or else. But the enforcement, without the enforcement, I really am concerned what's going to happen with the eventual implementation of the waterfront redevelopment plan, so people feel comfortable using it. I mean, it's just a huge issue, and that's a number one thing I really have a bugaboo about is the enforcement. It's really lacking, so something has to be done. Otherwise, a lot of this is going to be meaningless. It's going to be a lot of money that's spent that really doesn't achieve what it's really intended to. So just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment. Thank you.
Mr. McKay.
Okay, just to talk about a number of issues regarding this topic. Just touching upon the dogs on the leash. Are we emphasizing more on the Royal Road side or the Lagoon side? Because being there for most of my life, dogs are more or less off leash, etc. on the Royal Road side. Lagoon side, you don't see that many. So is the focus for nesting birds on the quiet, bucolic waters of the lagoon side, or are we more emphasizing on the Royal Road side? Definitely there's more dogs on the Royal Roads, the bay side, but the other side, no. And I hear people saying, well, their dogs are chasing the birds. Well, I don't, on the lagoon side, I don't see many dogs chasing birds. That's not to say it doesn't happen. I see more people and kids throwing stones and stuff at ducks and what have you than I do with dogs. Anyway, that's one part of the equation. So cobbling together a bunch of statements I've heard regarding closing the road, and the one that comes back is that the Canada geese it's unsafe for them to rock the road. They got their goslings, and well, first of all, the Canada geese are a feral species. They were never part of this area here. They were introduced in the early 60s by some ill-fated businessmen that thought it would be a great idea to bring all these geese and figuring they had for the tourists and tourism in the wintertime, that they'd bring the prairie farmers out so they could shoot Canada geese out of the sky. Never happened. So we're paying for the consequences of that now. They're everywhere. In fact, they're getting rid of them because it is a major league problem. Okay, so now coming back to the geese crossing the road. I haven't seen a Canada geese yet that has taken a back seat to any car. They stop the traffic. I don't care. Do what you have to do. Most people stop. They'll come, one will go across, one will go back. The goslings come with them. They sit there, they look at you, and then they move to one side, they go back. They don't stop. They don't care about anybody. And so the issue or the initiative putting forward to close the Cobourg Peninsula off, well, what about Lagoon Road? What about Anchorage? It's the same thing. They just take over. So are we going to stop? We're going to close those roads off as well. Getting back to the other species, they're rarely on the road. Never. The exception to the rule, the north end. Both north and south end, but particularly the north end on the lagoon side, people come there and they're feeding the ducks. They're feeding the geese. It is a feeding frenzy down there at times. There is ducks, there's geese, there's everything down there. And they're going across the road. They're going back and forth. You normally never see ducks on the road. Never. They're always on the lagoon side, paddling away to their content. And the same thing with this issue about the herons. They say they're scared of the traffic. No, they're not. Those herons down there, they're 50 feet away from the road and they're sitting there fishing, doing what they do best. There's never an issue. Okay, so we want to go further. We're talking about on the lagoon. We don't want any kayak ramps. We don't want this. We don't want that. Okay, so what are we going to do about the windsurfers, the kayakers, and the canoeists? What are we going to do about that? They've been there forever. I don't see them having any kind of disharmony with the birds. And so that's about all I got to say. But this is a contentious issue. And I think there's more to this equation than just closing the road. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Ms. Gibbons?
Thanks, Misty. I just wanted to clarify my kind of goal of my letter. First of all, I wrote that letter not realizing it would be sent out to the community. I thought it would just be solely for these people at this table. I wrote it very passionately. I'm a very dedicated, passionate wildlife biologist. I let the best of me, I let my heart get the best of me. I should not have pinpointed the Canada geese. It's just that I've rehabilitated every species in the lagoon. I've seen them be hit multiple. Gull the other day hit multiple times. So nobody can say that, you know, it's the ethical aspect of it. I don't care if it's a goose or if it's a gull or if it's a person. So this gull was hit once and he went sauntering off. He got hit again. And then he had neurological issues. So he was flopping around and he was gone. We couldn't find him and we couldn't save him. So he had a horrendous death. So that is what I'm trying to get across. It's the ethical aspect of it. People just are not considerate about anything about people. In Farley's case, throwing something at his head, like who does that? So I apologize if it raised more hairs than it should have, but I'm legitimately just wanting everybody to get along and just enjoy the lagoon. At the same time, the migratory bird sanctuary is there for a reason, right? Like there are bird species there that rely on us to protect them. Otherwise, they're going to be gone. And I understand the geese are invasive and they're a nuisance. Like I get that. But you can't tell me that people should just be running them over because they're blocking traffic, right? So the city and the government is doing what they can to, do their call and that sort of thing. And the avian flu really impacted Canada geese this year. I saw like maybe 2 clutches of Canada geese this summer. So, in time, things will take their toll, whether it's human induced population control or if it's just natural causes. So thank you for, listening and understanding why I'm trying to approach this. And that letter was just a very heartfelt writing that I wish I had written much differently. But thank you.
Before I let you speak there, Mr. McKay, Ms. Gibbons, I think that many of us empathize with the animals and the bird species in the lagoon and all over the community. So I don't think it's anything you need to apologize for. And I think that you came across as very real and relatable to a lot of people in the community that, could be watching these meetings too. So I thank you for being so completely honest. And, I think we respect that your professional opinion as well and your love for animals. And I think that we all love the animals. And I think it's a fine balance, like trying to find that natural balance between human and wildlife is a very difficult thing to try to achieve that balance. So please, no need for apologies here, not at this table. I am going to actually, Mr. McKay, I don't think Mr. Willing has spoken yet. So I'm going to let him jump in and then I'll go back to you. Okay. So thank you, Sarah.
Is it on? Am I here? Okay. One question I have that's on your bird species. You have a new bird called a sandpiper. Well, it's not really a new bird, but it's new to the spit. For years in which was Royal Bay, which was con aggregates, quarry and pit. We had a very healthy group of killdeer every year, and they would lay their eggs out in the middle of it'd be just a gravel surface in the middle of with nothing around, no cover or anything else around. And they hatched out, and we used to mark them. We used to mark them with rocks so no one would drive over them. And they were there for years. But I don't know if the pattern of raptors has changed, where there's more raptors hanging over the south side of Royal Bay now. And it could be because maybe it's the rapids, but it's probably disrupted the killdeer somewhat. So they're coming down and they're doing very well on the lagoon. And people have been, and the staff and the locals have been really good about marking the areas where the killdeer are. And they have the little traits of going around with a floppy wing or whatever. And they seem to have done very well there. And I guess, and they'll be there forever. The other thing is the business of migratory birds. And I'm very, very strong in a very strong position on this. That the fact that, as Rick said earlier, that it was a doctor from actually that looked after property on James Island, and Hatter was his name. And he was the one that introduced these birds, that the Canada geese, the non-migratory Canada geese to Vancouver Island in probably about 1964, 66. And up until that time, everyone here had complained because and I used to duck hunt when I was a kid. And a lot of fellows even used to duck hunt, believe it or not, in Murray's Pond after work. They would go down there and wait for the birds to come in. But we had no geese, and everybody from the prairies was so happy that they had these, they could go back and shoot 100 or 150 geese in a week. And they were really lovely birds. They were fed on grain fed, because these birds were on their way south. They were heading south, so they would stop in the farmers' fields and they would eat the grain, and then they would continue on. And you didn't see them till the following year. Well, but these ones that were introduced by Dr. Hatter, unfortunately, it was really bad timing that he messed with nature, because it was a time when he bought a bunch of geese that people suddenly stopped hunting geese. So nobody here really had an interest in the geese at all. And because basically they tasted a bit like flying fish. Yeah, their diet was a lot different than corn. It was definitely not a great meat. So that happened. And now, of course, as I said at the meeting when I came there, I'm sorry, but I feel so sorry for the Mitchell Farm people who have bring in hunters 12 months of the year in their fields to eliminate these non-migratory birds, because they're destroying their crops, they're destroying their fields, they're destroying their everything. It's just a constant fight. And people don't realize how many, like in the Cowichan Valley up by Dugan's Lake, there's one farm there where they annually crop. They bring in hunters just to do nothing to do but shoot these birds. And they're shooting like up to 1,300 to 1,400 out of these geese in a like October, November. They're shooting them. So we have this mess. It's unfortunately, it's created by man. I'm going back to Hawaii in a couple of weeks, and there's a little animal there, the British, we're great with dealing with nature in our own way, that we think we're smart. Well, they asked the silly Brits who bought the mongoose to Hawaii and thought it was going to be the end of a problem. They've created 10 times the problem. They have their songbirds are basically gone, because guess who eats the songbirds? The mongoose. And so we've done the same thing with this silly goose that is non-migratory, and we have it here. It is a problem in the lakes. Our fecal coliform content goes up in Elk Lake, Beaver Lake, Langford Lake, and Glen Lake. You can't go there to swim because the content is so high, because we have these birds. So you have it on your. Couldn't hear it that well, but you were talking about the addling of eggs. I think we have to be really careful there, because addling of eggs makes people get a warm and fuzzy feeling, but it doesn't stop the problem. The only way the problem is stopped is by the elimination of these birds, unfortunately. And there are people, while we're sitting in this room, there are people that are very close by us in the same development who are going to be putting in a permit, I'm sure, for more than just addling eggs. And so it's something that we have to sit. back in, but we can't be kissy about it. It's people have to go out there and if you want to start addling eggs, you better find a lot of people that want to go out and do it. And then you'll read some of the stories like the ones that showed up a few months ago in the TC, where these people had been in the business of confronting these Canada geese. Well, I'll tell you right now, having grown up on a farm and being attacked by a 40-pound tom turkey, a goose is just as bad or worse. And they usually attack you from behind. So you go and addle their eggs, you better be careful because somebody's going to come behind you and it's and they are vicious. They're a vicious bird. They're protecting their nests. But I know the south part from where we live now, which is I worked in there for 42 years, but I live up on Grattan now. And there's a path that goes from Grattan down to the crossing at Latoria, where Latoria comes on. And there are nests all the way through there now in the springtime. And these geese, these same famous geese, which unfortunately don't want to go to south for a nice holiday. And they're just continuing the proliferation of the species, and it's becoming even around the area of the quality foods, and that all the pathways in there, they're all starting to show signs of getting this infestation of these birds, and they're messing around on the sidewalks and everything else. The last thing I would like to say, though, that this, and Rick brought it up again, was this business of feeding these birds in two locations. People should not be feeding migratory birds of any sort right now. My friend who runs the one at Mitchell's farm that shoots on the farm said to me, Glenn, he said, well, we see a flock of geese come in, of these migratory geese come in. We can tell which ones have avian bird flu by the way they land. If they land badly, it's an avian bird flu. They are actually carriers of this. These, people that are misinformed and don't want to live with a balance of nature, that feed down by the bridge, they are feeding all these species right there. What do you get? You get birds feeding in an area and birds defecating. You are going to transmit that avian flu. If that avian flu gets worse, it's in the Fraser Valley again right now. It's showing up again now. And it'll get worse. One day you won't be eating chicken. You might be eating goose. I don't know. But it's a very dangerous disease. And anybody that's studied birds transmissible diseases knows that it's not a good scenario when this thing happens. Why they tell you to keep your bird feeders clean all the time. That's why they tell you to keep your bird feeders clean, because that's also transmitted by the same thing. So that's my opinion. I'm sorry, I'm passionate about it. But I grew up in this place. I grew up in the valley, Heavy Valley. I grew up on a farm, and I understand farm, and I understand the elimination of animals sometimes that are necessary. But do I think it is a necessity now? Absolutely. And the Canada goose is right at the top of my list.
Okay, Neve has her hand up. Sorry, I didn't see that earlier. But if you can unmute her.
Yeah, it's okay. Sorry, it took me a hot second to try and find that hand. I don't have anything kind of additional to add. I just wanted to say, I think the issue is going to come down to enforcement, but not just for leashing dogs. I don't think closing the road is going to do much, just in terms of, it's been mentioned already, but you're going to displace traffic and then have all sorts of issues with people walking down from other streets down to the lagoon. And that doesn't negate for the fact then that people are just awful in general and are going to be throwing rocks and stones and whatever at birds in the lagoon. Not to mention, you're still going to have pressures on the birds and habitat in the lagoon itself with recreational water users. So like paddle boarders, kayakers, like, yes, they've been there the whole time, but they still have an impact on populations that are there. So I think ultimately it's going to come down to enforcement, whether it's to do with dogs, car speeds, whatever. But I also think that if you're going to look into it more, you need to do more than just an EOA. I write EOAs regularly for work, and they're just very high level. So it's great to get like a very high overview on a topic, but I think for something like this, we need to start if it's going to be done to more detail, like down the line, you need to look into like actual specifics in terms of what species are there, how they utilize the habitat that's there. And then this was kind of touched on, I think. I feel like maybe Sarah used the geese as like as an example, like because the thing is, you're going to have all sorts of birds nesting in there. It's not just the geese, they're just the talking point, but they are one of the species that's mobile. That's already been mentioned. You're not going to get a lot of species in there that are going to be walking across the road. But a more detailed bird survey would give you information like that. And then because you have different behaviors associated with different species as well, some of them aren't going to be nesting right up against the road. You've got species that are going to be more hardy to human noise and car noise. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents. I just wanted to say, I think to get anything conclusive, you have to look into it on a species level at more detail, and that it's going to come down to enforcement. I think you're not going to be able to please everyone, and you're not going to be able to fix a problem without causing a problem elsewhere.
Thank you, Neve. I appreciate your comments. Yeah, so I'm gonna, Mr. McKay, I'm gonna let you have another go, and then I've got a question for you.
Sounds like we're in school. I'm on. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all these passionate people here. I appreciate it. It's what I get. I like to give and back and forth and whatever. That's the whole idea behind open discussion. First of all, we want to close the thing off about Canada geese and birds crossing roads. Stanley Park, the causeway, that's a common problem by Beaver Lake. Canada geese, ducks, just all the traffic. And you can imagine how much traffic comes down the causeway from Lions Gate, from North End. Stops the traffic. So that's just another, any issue where you got a sanctuary lake or whatever by a road, it's always a problem. Secondly, the business with the traffic, I understand that. I've seen it myself. And the signs. Okay. In my opinion, it's a Wild West show down there. And until we bring in this plan with the walkways, the roadway, and all the rest of the amenities, which it should be in there a long time ago. Number one, we got to do is part of the walkway thing. We got to have traffic calming, because I don't care where you go. We're just talking about before the meeting. There are so many people out there that when they get on the road, look out. It could be 20 clicks, it could be 30 clicks, it could be school zone, it could be a park. It doesn't make any difference. I got the right to fly through. How many times I've gone down Machosen and I got some guy eating my tail exhaust going down there, and you can just see him just champing at the bit. I'm doing the speed limit, but they want to get going. As soon as they go into Soup Road, whoa, they fly by so we can stop at the light at Kelly. Brilliant. Anyway, I digress. So the Wild West show and what we're planning to do, we're going to add civility to nature. Now that's an oxymoron if you ever heard one, but anyway, it's true. We can finally do something down there, which we're going to bring some civility. That's to walk and traffic. And the traffic, we could put all sorts of measures to slow traffic down. And as far as the signage is concerned, the way it is right now, putting signs on is ridiculous, because I mean, I understand, but signs upon signs upon signs. Well, after a while, it's just like it's visual pollution. Huh? What does that mean? Nothing. But if we put proper walkways with little footnotes discreetly placed in little places here and there, maybe people are going to start getting the hint with like little notes and little signs. And again, with the traffic, we've got, I notice on the plan that we're going to have 2 raised walkways, one at the rifle berm crossing and then one at the north end thereabouts. Well, why don't we put more in that slow these characters down? and maybe put chicanes or whatever. I go back to, like, we got an issue with Lagoon Road with speeders, and that's an issue. And I believe in the principle, but this caused a problem with people racing up to and racing after the speed bumps, because we live right beside it. So all night long, you're hearing these idiots just flying out of there with their race rockets. And so the issue is traffic calming through proper measures done tastefully, along with the proper walkway that people could enjoy walking instead of walking on the road, cars backing into people. And so I think once we get the plan in and everything in place and then review it all, I think it'll go a long ways to satisfying a lot of the issues which we're facing. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Oh, David. It's all yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. The opportunity to speak is here, so I think I will. It's really many good ideas are heard here. Thank you for the presentation. It was very nice to have this work done for us so efficiently and so expertly. I think that the enforcement is important. I remind everyone, of course, though, that the cost of enforcement is very high. Signs are predictable. You can do that, but if it's a bylaw officer or some such who's actually traveling, the cost of that can pile up very quickly. So the intent has to be super strong and the wish for it. I keep thinking of the fact that the spit is of such a precious natural environment, the entire lagoon, and that it is, I understand, somewhere I read about 3% of the world's unprotected urban shorefront is natural. The rest has been hardened and altered. I think that the gravel pit did some industrial adjustments to the shorefront there, and that we have this opportunity to preserve it. It seems to be the intent in Colwood to preserve it. If we lay on too much activity, I don't see how it can continue as a effective bird sanctuary, and perhaps already we've done more damage than we would like. The notion of whether or not the traffic should continue, I'm reminded by a fellow I met at the bakery when we first bought it in '95, who happened to be a friend of the family from back in Ontario, of all things, lived at the very bottom, right by Lagoon Road. And I believe he moved in there 40 years ago and counted 12 cars a day during rush hour crossing the spit. And I visited him at his house. It would have to be 25 years ago now. Our boys and my wife, we went down, we had coffee with them and snack with the kids. And he was saying it was now up to 1,400 cars a day. And I noticed in one of the reports here with this program, we had in 1950, 105,000 people living in Greater Victoria. Then 2019, it's 412. I believe now they're talking 424 or some number like that in the CRD. And in 2038, project 500,000. Those numbers seem to be climbing faster right now, but I'll go with that. 500,000 people compared to where we are now means the demands on that bird sanctuary are simply going to increase. And as Colwood is leading in the build out, all these new people look for a place to recreate. So I think we need to take the time right now when we still have something in not pristine, but in very good condition, really. And we need to really decide what we want to use it for. If Super Road Corridor is a traffic corridor, it can be improved, and we're working on improvements now. For handling the traffic, it seems to me 1,600, 2,000 cars a day now using the spit for commuting could maybe travel in the intended travel corridor and not along the spit. How you can control that, I don't know. But when it was closed, I saw a park that was suddenly bursting with life, young kids on bicycles, people in wheelchairs, all sorts of folks doing all kinds of wandering along the roads, birds everywhere. It was just like this incredible increase. I live nearby. I could walk down there. People could still park their cars there and enjoy it. But that's my own personal opinion. I see the surveys, of course. Anyway, I think that is really all I have to say. Is this notion of this new pathway, the project that is being worked on by the city staff right now is very exciting and can incorporate hopefully some elements. And I do think of the Goldstream Park where they wanted to protect some of the forest lands next to the water there. They put up those railing fences and discrete signs asking people to stay out with information signs saying why. Perhaps we can carve out good large chunks and protect people that way. Just a thought. And somehow then allow areas to be open. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And I'm hoping that maybe Ian Borhill can speak to how these things that are coming up today, the talking about the dogs on leash, the signage, the enforcement, and how that's incorporated into the stewardship plan. But I will let Sarah speak. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I see this issue that we're discussing today as an opportunity for us to shine. So I agree, like enforcement is costly. But I also think that that the city and CRD could be doing a better job as well. And I think that's a discussion that we should maybe open up with them to improve that. However, I've worked as a volunteer coordinator for most of my life, and it might be a great opportunity for us to collaborate with CRD, Parks Canada, develop our own volunteer program, and get some naturalists out there, not for enforcement, of course, but just to educate about the migratory birds, educate about the ecosystems that they're utilizing and how important they are, and and utilize it as a learning tool. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I think I agree with Rick in the sense that once the stewardship plan is developed, some of the issues to do with disturbance will be, ameliorated to some degree, because it does help to keep people and cars in places where people and cars should be, and not just randomly distributed over the peninsula as a whole. But I do think I do want to sort of dig into this reason why 60% of people who responded to the survey are desperate to keep the road open at all times, and I do wonder. It'd be interesting to sort of know a little bit more. I mean, I know we don't have the data for that, but interesting to know a little bit more about their reasons, because it strikes me that there's sort of the two main reasons why people want that road is one is because they want to have access to the peninsula, which I think, totally understandable, and it's a valuable place that people can go and recreate. And then there's those that want it because that's a route they can use to avoid the traffic. And I think that group of people, I don't think necessarily they should be particularly catered for. It's not a road that's really ideal to use in that way. So it'd be interesting to find out a little bit more about who the people are that want that road open, because it's the through traffic that is causing a lot of the trouble we're talking about. So
Thank you. And I actually think that David here was just showing me that some of that is in the report. Oh, yeah. Thanks.
Sorry to take that. I just want to point out, I found this just a bit ago. And I've been looking for it, but respondents, of course, 61% wanted to keep it open. Colwood residents, 55%. Lagoon residents, 41%. So the survey did break out different elements. We were discussing that earlier, I know, and so I think I managed to find it. It does change the picture a little bit.
Go ahead, Rick.
Okay, yeah, and with regard to the traffic, flow through traffic, I'm guilty because I live down there. And I did not want to see the road closed down. The traffic for the locals, there's only, if we close that, there's only one way out. So for us and a lot of residents there, we find that going through there and into town, it's a lot better than going up to Machosen, on to Soup, and go through that nightmare of traffic and congestion up there. I think what you'll find is a lot of the traffic congestion we have now is people trying to take a shortcut. They don't live in this area. I live up in Crowhurst, and I tell you, when I could have got to turn right on the lagoon or left, it doesn't make any difference. It's 30 kilometers speed zone coming down that hill. And I'm telling you, when you're turning right or left, sometimes you're taking your life in your hand because these maniacs are flying. In fact, today I saw a character come down there, and the speed bumps are right in front of Crowhurst. He hit that speed bump and he was damn near airborne. He could care less. He wants to get going. But anyway, the traffic. Okay, so this is our way of going to and from. We don't have to go to Machosen Road. And I agree with what David's saying, is there's got to be some kind of an improvement done to the Soup Road or Veterans Memorial, because people are continually using this area as some kind of a shortcut. Okay, I can understand using it as a shortcut to go along the scenic area of the beach and the bucolic setting of the lagoon and all that kind of stuff. I get it. But that's not the case. It's like pedal to the metal. So they're not going there to look at, slow down and calm down. I'm going to work. No, it's you got someone on your rear end, and they're past you. And it's again, it comes down to control. And for the locals that live in their area, it's very convenient for us to go this way or we go that way. For the most part, we're going in the town to go this way. And I tell you, there's nothing better than coming home at night or in the evening when you go across that bridge and that vista opens up in front of you. It's ethereal. I'm using the word ethereal. So I think there's a lot to the equation, but I think a lot of it, for the most part, is going to be if we can address it once we bring, again, that word civility to that area. And that means the people there, their habits with their pets, the traffic, and bring some kind of a control and with signage and whatever we have to do. And I think this is going to be a static solution. It's going to be a dynamic solution, a work in progress. Thank you.
Thank you for that. All of that's relative. I fear that we were getting starting a little bit off topic, talking about pushing traffic up onto Lagoon and Machosen and down Soup, but I appreciate what you're saying. So Ian, do you think that, before we wrap up today, that you could just maybe briefly speak to how we're addressing some of these concerns that are coming up at the table today in the waterfront stewardship draft plan, just to ease some of the concerns around the table today? Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. So the draft waterfront stewardship plan, the latest version that was endorsed by council for public stakeholder and partner engagement in the summer. I just did a quick keyword search. Fencing's mentioned throughout 16 times. On page 59, it generally describes the approach to the multi-use pathway and associated ecosystem restoration areas. It describes signage, ecological restoration, such as the planting of thickets of snowberry and Nooka rose, as well as the placement of strategically located signage and fencing to help minimize movement of people off the multi-use pathway onto adjacent landscape areas and help prevent the movement of geese up into riparian zone where they cause the most damage. So it's trying to address not only issues relating to human trampling, but also geese. So it's trying to, as Nafiseh said, approach things in a holistic and comprehensive way. With respect to traffic calming, as was mentioned by the committee, there are some tactics proposed in the plan that would try to attempt to reduce speeds, vehicle speeds. Some are very obvious in terms of the narrowing and the speed hump that would be created at the Rifleby berm crossing. Others are more nuanced. The parking areas would likely be features in the proposed redesign that would slow down traffic. The 45-degree nature of the parking areas as you pass them on the roadway would likely cause people to slow down because of the way that those parking areas would be used. So right throughout the plan, there is proposed tactics and strategies to try to get at some of these issues. I'll note one potential gap, and that is with respect to additional research and data gathering. Other municipalities, since this project was started, have moved to comprehensive baseline studies of biodiversity in communities. Saanich recently released a state of biodiversity report for their community. Certainly in our research that was presented today, there are gaps as it relates to the extent that human activity are creating issues at the lagoon. So those are, informational opportunities for us to potentially add insights into these issues. And if the committee so chose to recommend staff address those gaps, we would be happy to respond.
Thank you. Does anybody at the committee table would like to make a motion to? Yes? Okay. Want to put your mic on there or hit your button? Okay, so
Can I request a motion to provide more data on the impacts to the migratory bird sanctuary? Do I need to go?
Madam
Please
Chair,
go ahead.
so as I mentioned, other municipalities are in front of this. One idea that the committee might want to consider is characterizing the additional information through a biodiversity baseline study that included an assessment of human impacts at Esquimalt Lagoon. That's the type of study that we're looking into as potentially being valuable.
Okay. We have that capability within the city staff in place.
Through the chair, this committee could recommend to council that the city acquire the resources to undertake such a study. It would likely be a project that includes both city staff and consultants.
Okay. How do I make that motion?
Perhaps you can help us craft.
Yeah.
Do you want to provide some more detail, maybe to the impacts of the migratory bird sanctuary? So you had mentioned that there was some sort of study that was being undertaken already. Ian, do you want to?
Through the chair, yes. So in Saanich, the study that I referenced was referred to as a state of biodiversity community study. So if the committee wanted to make a recommendation along the lines of recommending to council that a biodiversity baseline study be undertaken that includes an assessment of human impacts at Esquimalt Migratory Bird Sanctuary, that would address that.
Does that?
What he said.
What he said.
Sorry, my brain is not working today. Do I need to elaborate? How can we move forward with this?
Did you capture?
Does someone
some
else
of
want to
that?
make a motion?
I'm gonna let Farley speak here for a moment. Are you looking to like make an amendment to that? Or you want something else? Oh, you're on something different? Okay. So let's finish with Ms. Gibbons' motion then. Do you feel that you were able to capture? Yes, okay.
So that the
If you
bio,
can-
do
yeah.
you want me to read that?
Sure, if you can read it back to us.
That the biodiversity baseline study be undertaken of an assessment of the public impact on the bird sanctuary to the Esquimalt Lagoon. Is that correct?
Go ahead, Ms.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'll just, that committee recommend that a biodiversity baseline study be undertaken that includes an assessment of the human impacts at the Esquimalt Migratory Bird Sanctuary.
Well said, thank you. Okay, do we need to hear that again or is, okay. Sorry? Oh, okay. Okay, so if I can get corporate services to read that motion one more time so that everybody understands.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that the Waterfront Committee, Stewardship Committee recommend to council that a biodiversity baseline study be undertaken that includes an assessment of the public impact on the bird sanctuary at the Esquimalt Lagoon.
And just to be clear, this is something that Ian, you mentioned that there is a gap there. So this is not something that we have already done as we've been put this draft. Okay. Okay, so I guess at this point we have a motion on the table. So do we have a seconder? I don't need a seconder, right? Sorry. Okay. So we'll call the question.
I just have, can I just ask a really quick question?
Go ahead, Neil.
Sorry, I have my hand up, but I don't think you could see. Will the information gathered in that be used as part of the this draft plan? I'm just curious in case there's like backlash as to it not being the best use of money.
Through the
Yeah.
chair. Yes, I have to confess that this type of study has been something that we've highlighted as potentially very useful in looking at before and after impacts of implementation of the Waterfront Stewardship Plan. Sorry, Glenn, I should get closer to the mic. And we have been in conversation with other municipalities that are contemplating the same work or have recently done this type of work, and also in conversation with Parks Canada as it relates to our partnership on feasibility studies for the National Urban Park. So really getting at what is there now, the opportunities for us to improve biodiversity and ecosystem function, and then being able to track the performance of the Waterfront Stewardship Plan long-term it would be one of the potential outcomes of such a study.
No, that's awesome. Thank you. I do these for work, so I'm behind it. I just know that there's cynical people out there.
Okay, so I'm going to call the question. So regarding Ms. Gibbons' motion on the floor, all in favor? Okay. And opposed? Glenn Willing and Rick McKay opposed. So motion carried.
Haven't we already established some of this biodiversity implementation through this presentation today, where we were talking about addling of eggs and things like this? Are we doing a report on top of a report, a study on top of a study that's already been put in place and is apparently, according to your report, is being implemented, is proposed to be implemented now, correct?
Thank you for that question through Madam Chair. So Certainly, there's been some work done in the area of assessing the ecosystem function, looking at different issues that have come up over the years. But an overall study that is trying to get a look at all aspects of biodiversity in this area has not been undertaken. So as was mentioned, an environmental overview assessment was conducted. It was primarily looking at existing research. There wasn't new primary research generated. So this new study potentially would include biologists in the field sampling and doing work that would be unique.
Thank you. Go ahead, Farley.
No, I want to go back to my earlier point now that we've finished with this excellent motion. I do want to re-raise the issue of enforcement, regardless of what the costs are, how the costs can be recovered, and they can be recovered. And I have some experience in that area. But my concern is this: the waterfront stewardship plan is a development plan, right? And development plans have to have some way of assessing whether they have proven to be successful or not. And we can go on the good graces of human beings, and we see so many examples of that every day in the news. People are civil to an extent, but people are also extremely selfish. And I think one of the best examples of that in Greater Victoria is what goes on Ocean Boulevard and the spit. You know, whether it's fires in the evening, whether it's the dogs being unleashed, whether it's people parking along the pedestrian walkway along the side of the road or what have you. I think having some statement on ways that the plan can be monitored, can be enforced, to me is tantamount to having a wonderful development plan in terms of infilling and increased density, and not doing any building inspections, and also having buildings declared uninhabitable. So that's my concern with this. So that's why I'm raising it, and there has to be something in that plan that addresses that. And I don't think it has to have a ton of detail, but ways that perhaps Colwood can move towards in enforcing what it sets out. Otherwise, the components of the waterfront development plan, some will be successful in spite of people, but others won't be, and it'll be because of people. So I just throw that out right now, and I would hope that that would be given some due consideration and some statement put within the plan or at its point of implementation, because a plan's going to have to be assessed at some point.
Thank you.
Success is killing us. We live on Lagoon Road and we overlook the lagoon, and we could see, especially on a sunny day, the amount of people that are parked. It's one into the next. Fine, because we're advertising we got the jewel of Greater Victoria, which I agree 100%. We do. So what they're doing is bringing more people down to this area, and you're always going to have the morons. You're never going to get away from that. But if we close that area off, where are people going to park? Because you're still going to have people. So you're going to close off at both ends, say, because you don't want to disturb anything. Where are people going to park? They're going to be parking up Lagoon Road on the other side of Ocean Boulevard, up Millburn and on Anchorage. When we've had situations down there where we've had a number of years ago where they had like fireworks or something, Ford Rod Hill, people are parked up on our street. That's Crowhurst. That's a half a kilometer. I mean, I don't know what we do. I mean, how do you just shut an area off? You got to take into parking into account. People don't want cars parked in on their front yard. And So it's a many-headed hydra here that we have to address. And like I say, it's got to be work in progress and one step at a time and just see where we go. Thank you.
Okay. A lot of issues being brought up today. But I think that we've got a draft of the waterfront stewardship plan that's in place. We do have a motion, a recommendation coming forward to council. So does anybody have any further questions today regarding Nafiseh's reports or any of the information that was in front of us? Yep. Chris, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually do. I think the likely, if there was going to be a consideration of some sort of road closure, I would suspect that the most sensible solution would be the seasonal option when it's particularly sensitive. If the baseline study comes out with a result that's going to indicate that the disturbance during that March-April period is going to be a problem, then it would seem that that would be the time to consider a closure, where I don't think you are going to have those issues of then displacing a whole bunch of parking, because it's not going to be so busy at that time of year for people visiting anyway. But that was just a thought.
So, Ian, can you tell us when this recommendation would come forward? The motion that was on the table, when this would come forward to council approximately?
My expectation would be the next available agenda that staff would be able to bring it forward to. I'd have to connect with corporate services to see when that would be. And just to clarify that the current waterfront stewardship plan recommends that the current Ocean Boulevard access be maintained. The realities around closure of that road are currently proposed to be addressed when seasonal storms essentially force the closure because of safety issues. There aren't any proposals to close it per se, and in terms of the way we would interpret the recommendation relative to gathering more information, it would be in the context of adding data and understanding to the different issues, as opposed to taking a position on any one community issue in this area. So
that is clear to me. Thank you. Okay, well, if there, Glenn, just one more. Let's get you to.
Chair, through the chair, this discussion of closure of any sort in the spring seems redundant, because if you're looking at addling eggs successfully, you will eliminate 75% of your problem, because there's only two types of nesting birds down there, basically. Three, sorry, you got your killdeer, you got your geese, and you got your mallard ducks. Mallard ducks fly back and forth. They go south. Some go south, some stay here. We have some residents, whatever else. But if you addle the eggs, it's very simple. It's just like being in a farmyard. If you addle the eggs, guess what? Mom sits on the eggs for 2 or 3 months and nothing hatches. So you don't have the problem of them going back and forth across the road because they aren't there. So the number of mallards nesting there, this is not a nesting. People are gonna have to get it through their heads. This is not a primary nesting area. This is a migratory place where birds land, stay there for a week, 2 weeks, continue their journey south or continue their journey north. But it is definitely not a breeding ground of any magnitude for any species except the non-resident, the non-migratory Canada geese, which are a problem. I'm sorry, I can't go any direction on that, but I can't even entertain, personally, I cannot entertain any closure to accommodate some silliness about problem with traffic and geese.
A final comment on this is about the birds on the road and in conjunction with Glenn was saying. I can see the major problem, apart from the Canada geese being Canada geese, is people feeding birds. North end, south end. They're on the lagoon side and they feed them on the bay side, on the parking lot there. So what are the geese and what are the animals? They're going to go across the road, back and forth. They want to take it easy. Someone's feeding them. At the south end is bad enough, but the north end, as I said earlier, it's a feeding frenzy down there. There is literally hundreds at times. People come in and they literally drop a bag. Like I'm talking about a 15-pound bag of seed, boom, right on the in the parking lot and on the green space there. And it is just chaos down there. And they're all over the place. And they're fighting to get all this food and they're flying all over the place. I mean, I think that is one of the major things that have to be addressed. Are we going to be serious about nature? I know when I was in Australia, we went to Fraser Island and they had the conservationists down there. I tell you, did they take that serious about feeding animals? They went ballistic if anyone ever fed any kind of an animal. They said, you feed an animal, it's a dead animal, period. Don't feed them. And this is what we have going down there now. I know it's the best of intentions, people with their kids and feeding, but they're doing a detriment to them. And all they're doing is attracting all because they sit there waiting. And I think it is a major issue. And I think this has to be addressed in the big picture. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this was a really good, thorough discussion today. But
Never.
So if there's no further questions or comments, then I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn, please. Can I get a motion, Mr. McKay? All in favor? Adjourned. Thank you.